Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City jazz trumpeter Nate Nall. He talked about his debut album, 2018's Places to Go, and he is going places himself. Originally from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, he came to Kansas City to develop into a talented composer and arranger and a student of saxophonist Bobby Watson at UMKC. Since then, he has performed at Kansas City's most prominent jazz venues like the Blue Room, at the American Jazz Museum, and the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts, along with Chris Hazelton's Quartet, Clint Ashlock's New Jazz Order Big Band, the David Basse Cartwright Septet, and his own group, the Nate Nall Quintet. He's full of great stories and insights, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Well, Nate, thank you for taking a minute out. Thank you for sending out the music, Places to Go. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, thanks for listening.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about this album. This album sounds wonderful, and it's a great representation, I'm sure, of you and what's going on in Kansas City. So I want to know from you, how do you feel about this album?
Yeah, I feel great about the album. I mean, all the guys on the record played outstandingly, and Dwayne Trower at Weights and Measures Studios, he did the mix and master, and he did an outstanding job. It's all original music, so I think it's really great to kind of put my stamp on that. And this is my first album, debut album as a leader, so yeah, just stoked to get it out.
What do you want the listener to get from this experience? How do you want them to feel about what you put out?
Yeah, so, I mean, I hope that overall that my music just brings joy, you know, and love to people. Like, the album's called Places to Go, so each song on the album is kind of like a musical landscape or a different place that we're going. You know, so like the first song, Crescent Sun, was written about the solar eclipse that happened last year. So it's that kind of journey of that song is from like intensity to peace in the resolution of the end of the song, or like Memory of Her I wrote for my grandma that passed away. So that's kind of that place is kind of taking you through grief and hope. So like each song, I'm hoping that, yeah, like the record, if you listen to it in its entirety, kind of has an arc of it's kind of an emotional experience. So I'm hoping that the listener can feel the joy and hopefulness of the record also.
Wonderful. So were you born and raised in Kansas City?
Actually, I was born in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, in the boot heel of Missouri.
Gotcha.
But I moved to Kansas City to study with Bobby Watson at UMKC, and that was the best choice I could have made for school.
Well, before we get into that phase of your life, talk to me about your childhood in Cape Girardeau and how you got involved with jazz, and maybe what jazz you were listening to in the beginning that got you hooked.
I mean, shoot, Cape Girardeau is a pretty small town. I mean, it's a college town, but it's a small college town, southeast Missouri State. So it's right on the Mississippi River, and a lot of the music that's happening there is like country or like blues, you know, country blues kind of stuff. So early on, I didn't experience jazz live, but I only really experienced it on records. Like, my dad, he's a music minister, so I heard a lot of music in church, gospel music and, you know, kind of contemporary Christian music, but he also was real into, classical music like Aaron Copland and Stravinsky and stuff like that, and also had a few cassette tapes of Glenn Miller Band and Dave Brubeck. So like the first jazz I ever heard was Dave Brubeck and Glenn Miller Band. I actually wanted to play the trumpet because of the trumpet solo on In the Mood, which is kind of crazy because that's, you know, so many people laugh at that song. But that was actually, as a kid, that was my inspiration. But then in junior high school, I got a CD of Wynton Marsalis playing with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And actually, looking back, Bobby Watson's actually on that album, which is crazy. But, so that was the first record I got that I was like, man, the trumpet is awesome, you know, hearing what Wynton could do on the trumpet. But when I first heard Miles Davis on Kinda Blue, that's when I was like, oh man, not just the trumpet, but jazz is really cool. And so, like, from there, just opened up the rabbit hole, you know. So I delved real deep into John Coltrane's playing and real deep into Clifford Brown, and then, you know, all the trumpet players, Lee Morgan, you know, Miles, Kenny Dorham, you know, and then later on, Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw have been really big influences on me.
Talk to me about Bobby. That was obviously why you came up to Kansas City. He's had a profound impact on this city, and I know his students talk glowingly about him. So talk to me about what he taught you, not only about music, but about life.
Bobby was a real mentor to me, and I mean, kind of just the way Bobby is like he approaches all his teaching as, like what you just said, as like teaching about life. Some of the big things that I got from Bobby is like my second year studying with Bobby. That was when my grandma passed away, and I wrote that tune in memory of her from that experience. One thing Bobby told me was, like, just go somewhere by myself and just play my horn and kind of, like, try to get out the feelings that I was feeling that I couldn't express in words with my horn. And then that was the first time, really, I think, when I started finding my own voice. When I was just, like, you know, I wasn't transcribing. I was just, like, playing what I was feeling. And that was really healing for me. And, you know, I mean, there's a great healing power in music. And that was a big lesson I learned from Bobby. Also, like, you know, we would talk about things like ballad playing. And he would say, you know, have you ever loved somebody? Right? How are you going to play a ballad if you haven't loved someone? So, you know, I mean, he was about more than music, you know, exactly, like he's about life.
Since your time at UMKC, you obviously got woven into the Kansas City scene. You played at the Blue Room, the Jazz Museum. You've been with, you know, a lot of different cats from the Kansas City area. Talk to me about kind of your evolution from your time in school to today and how you've gotten interspersed into the Kansas City jazz scene.
A big way I got connected was I started going to this big band jam session at Harling's on Main Street with Clint Ashlock and his band. It was running on Tuesday nights on Main Street for about 10 years. So towards the end of that 10 years is when I arrived in Kansas City. And I just kept coming in and singing with the band. And eventually, because they just needed a trumpet player, I started playing with the band. And that was a really great, you know, real world experience. And then at the same time, Bobby would be throwing me like private party gigs and stuff like that. So I was getting my feet wet on some kind of safe opportunities. And then the guys, I worked really hard and got a lot better in that time especially. And so guys started calling me from gigs, guys that heard me playing with Clint's band, and Clint Ashlock would sub out some gigs to me. Some of my first calls were from Ryan Heinlein. I played with him and his band, the Project H, which now I'm a member of, now that Clint has been doing Kansas City Jazz Orchestra real hard. So I replaced him in the Project H with Ryan Heinlein, and then I started playing with David Basse Septet, David Basse, Joe Cartwright. Took my first real tour with them. We went throughout western Kansas up through Colorado too, so that was really cool. And since then, man, I've been, you know, playing 2 or 3 nights a week with a bunch of bands. I mean, I just went with the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra to Europe. We went to Germany and Poland with Deborah Brown, and I got to play. I was a featured soloist in Germany and Poland at the Hanover Jazz Festival there. And also during that time, I placed second place in the National Trumpet Competition, and I did a Betty Carter Jazz Ahead Fellowship at the Kennedy Center, where I got to play my own original music to a national audience. So that was real inspiring to me personally as a composer. Like, kind of gave me more confidence. And then I'm really indebted to a lot of people in KC. I feel like KC is such a unique place in that the scene is just small enough that people are working together and really uplifting each other instead of feeling so competitive. I owe a lot to Chris Hazelton and Todd Strait and Stan Kessler, you know, everyone who's given me opportunities. So,
you know, I remember back in my days when I lived in the city, I used to go up to Harlingen. The first time I ever saw that on Tuesday night, I was like, wow, what is this? Because that room was just packed with guys. It was loud. There was just people sitting around sipping on beers. It was a pretty cool, magical experience. What do you like best about Kansas City?
Man, you know, one thing I love about KC is that there's so many original voices. You know, there's plenty of great players that have come out of, you know, North Texas and Berkeley and places like that. But I feel like, you know, Kansas City, for better or worse, you know, we have a lot of people kind of finding their own path, doing their own thing. And I feel like, you know, so to answer your question in 2 ways. One, there's a lot of people doing their own thing. You know, a lot of original voices on each instrument. Like you listen to Clint Ashlock or Stan Kessler or Herman Mahari or me, we all sound very different. in Kansas City, there's so many different places that are supporting music. I mean, Green Lady Lounge especially has, you know, music almost every night of the week. You know, like I played at the Black Dolphin with a quartet on Saturday, and we were the third band. So I was like, man, where do you see that? Only at like Smalls, you know, in New York. So like, Kansas City is a great place to be. And I think because of the history of Charlie Parker and Count Basie, I think there's, like, people in Kansas City know that, oh yeah, like, we're a jazz city, but there's a lot of good support from people coming out.
And I'm just piggybacking off what you say. I think if you really look at what's going on in Kansas City, if there was a national publication or venue that would decide to say, let's look at this town, I think people would be surprised at what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
You're a guy that's been around, educated in Kansas City. You migrated up here. Your first album's out. You got a lot going on. You're playing in all the top venues here in town. Let's say we talk in 5 years. If things are really going for you, you know, going in the right direction, what will you want to tell me? We start the interview and I say, what's up? What are you going to want to tell me is going on?
Oh, man. Yeah, so one thing is I'm married. I have a wife. Kristen's my wife, so some of that depends on her, and, you know, I mean, for sure. But I would love to do more touring. I mean, right now I've been playing most weekends with wedding bands outside of KC and various places, just kind of, you know, because I really love traveling. So in 5 years, I'd like to say I've been traveling more. Honestly, right now I don't really have a desire to move to New York, but I definitely want to spend some more time there. I have some friends up there, Stuart Mack and Billy Test, and some guys that I went to the Betty Carter Institute with that are, you know, getting around the scene. So I'd like to spend a couple months up there, just kind of get my feet wet and meet some more people in New York. But yeah, I mean, in 5 years, I definitely would like to have come out with another project. I mean, right now I'm doing Places to Go. I'm hoping to do an album called People to See, which is kind of you know, would be like small groups, like duos or trios with, you know, musicians that I admire. So, yeah, I mean, always pressing forward, always writing music. I hope that in 5 years I could say that my music has impacted more people.
Well, that's a logical sophomore album for you. If you got Places to Go, you got People to See. So that makes sense. That's part two.
Yeah.
So what live shows, jazz shows, have you seen that really made a deep impact on you?
Oh, man. I mean, one that immediately comes to mind is I heard Wayne Shorter Quartet play in Omaha a few years ago. You know, Brian Blade and Patitucci and Danilo Perez. I mean, that was like next level communication. Like, those guys they were listening so much. Like, there was one point when Danilo, like, quoted part of one song, and then they started playing the chord progression to that song, and then went back into the other song. Like, it's crazy. Another concerts that come to mind, Pat Metheny, you know, with Chris Potter Unity Band. I mean, that's just like shred fest. Like, Chris Potter he's so amazing at what he does. Another one that comes to mind, I saw Ambrose Akamusuri play at the Blue Room. You know, I think he's a guy that's really innovating right now on the trumpet. You know, and one thing that really impressed me about his playing is, you know, he does these half valve things that almost sounds like he's singing through his trumpet. It's really beautiful. So those are some that come immediately to mind. Yeah.
So since we're in Kansas City, it's always kind of nice to get bespectacled by this town we live in. And I would want to ask you this: if you could get into a jazz DeLorean and go back in time, who are you going to go see? Where are you going to go? What year? Who do you want to see?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear Bird play. Gosh, if I could hear Bird play live, wow. So, yeah, definitely, you know, when Bird was with the McShann Band, I would have loved to hear Buck Clayton play the trumpet, you know. I mean, just the experience, you know, I mean, there were so many clubs in Kansas City, like, you know, looking at pictures and stuff. I mean, there was club after club after club. So I think just experiencing that culture, I think, would have been, you know, interesting, you know. And then, but hearing Bird play, I mean, gosh, we're still trying to do what Bird's doing. You know, all the guys have played through the Omni book. You know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time transcribing Bird, and like, I'm still trying to get his phrasing, you know, and trying to get, like, the way he articulates, he has such a bounciness to his playing. Bird was the greatest.
So why do you love jazz?
Yeah, I love jazz because it's an individual expression, but it's expressed in a group. So it's like a lot like democracy, right? I've heard Wynton Marsalis talk about jazz being like democracy, but when you're playing jazz, you have something that you're, as a trumpet player, I have, certain things I'm trying to express, trying to express what I'm feeling in the moment, trying to express love and joy, or sorrow at the tragedy that's going on, or, whatever that's happening that day, and all the other guys are expressing that too, but it's a very conversational music, so the beauty to me about jazz is that it's always changing, and it's never the same. We can play the same song a zillion times and always be different. It's like a painter that puts his brush on the canvas but never takes it off, right? What's there is there, and it lives in the air, and maybe it's not perfect all the time, but that's actually part of the beauty of it. That's honestly like a reason I love some of Freddie Hubbard's playing or Miles. Like occasionally you hear those notes that are like, oh man, it's not quite perfect, but it's human, and that human conversation is a beautiful thing.
So let's get to the essence of Nate. Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans, this community, but you know you best. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? That's funny question. Yeah, I think I'm I'm an American Christian man that is trying to express love through music. I feel most myself when I'm improvising on the trumpet. I feel like when I play the trumpet that I'm able to express feelings that I can't in words. And so I feel like listening to my playing, I think people will notice that. People can hear an honesty in my playing and an honesty in my compositions, and I think that's definitely true on the album that I just released. Yeah, who am I? I'm just a man trying to play music and glorify God doing that.
Cool. I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Nate, thank you for taking some time out to talk about places to go, talk about your life and music. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you. And thanks for doing the Neon Jazz blog. We need more people like you.
Right on. I'm glad you enjoy it, man. It's definitely a labor of love for sure.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Nate for his time, his music, and his stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.